Good evening, everyone. Do you know what the music is? I mean, the film Home from Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND was seen by more than 660 million people in the whole world, and 250 Chinese people amongst them. So you can find it. We'll see it in about. So we'll see him in about 20 minutes. So this is now the closing session of this World Forum 2018. I hope it was very fruitful for you. Do you have the VIP here? Are you paid a lot of money? Okay, so please smile from beginning to end, and you have to pay attention, because if I get it right, the cameras are over there to film the speakers, so you'll always be behind in the background, just like in TV shows, you know, they pick the best ones, and it's you tonight, so but you're important as well, don't worry, on the other side. So did it go well, these 3 days for you? Yeah? So for you, sir, can you tell me something you can remember from these 3 days? Well, mainly be careful with the energy in the future. Yes, this was a topic when we explored a local dimension, and the energy transition is a key point. Is it what you realized? Yes, I think in terms of energy in particular, as we said in the opening session, in fact, for energy, you have to look at the super global to have quality super local. So the local that Jeremy Rifkin mentioned. Okay, fantastic. A lady on the other side to even out. I know these ladies over there already. So she's shopping. I won't come to him. No. I know her. What about you? You took part in these 3 days? Yeah, indeed. We were reporters for the World Forum, so we wrote quite a lot of articles. It was very fruitful. It was a great experience, and I would remember the word collaboration. What do you mean? Between who and how? Well, between multinationals and territories and companies, between people. So it's the most important, and yeah. That's it, collaboration and cooperation. Yeah, this is also, I mean, as you said, this is another keyword for these 2 days. And you're writing another article for the end, right? Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to introduce Michael SHUMAN, who's here. He's great because he's at the head with a whole group with Julie. I don't know where she is. Oh, yeah, you're here. So a group that created this network, this fantastic network of companies in the States, more than 4,500 SMEs, and you have the transition and super local. This will be done with collaboration and cooperation. It is their job. Bring together companies to transform the economic models on territories. You explained it before, the day before yesterday during the opening session. So Michael was with us last year, and we heard you during the opening session as well. And then when we listened, we thought super local. Wow, you're the super local guy. You don't have your cape with you, but it's you. So we thought you had to come back for the closing session. He took part in the 3 days, and now he's going to share in about 10 minutes his opinion, what struck him, and what he saw, what he could notice in all the exchanges you had. So there were about 80 meetings during 3 days with the masterclass with Jeremy Rifkin, and we'll see a few pictures. So it was forbidden to people that were older than 25 years old, in fact, with about 1,500 young people gathered around Jeremy Rifkin. And his message, I believe, got right to the point. I saw the articles you wrote for these 2 days. The message was really clear. It's your generation that will be at the head to transform and change and cooperate and get together for this transition, so on our territories. So you listen to these 3 days and the plenary sessions, the workshops everywhere in the world, and obviously, given what you have in the United States with Julie, you were in the best position to really endorse this role of super local and share your feelings about these 3 days. Welcome, Michael.
Look up in the air. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's super local man and super local woman. We have seen all kinds of super ideas presented by supermen and superwomen over the last 3 days. Those of you who were at this conference understand that being super local means embracing locally owned business and trying to create a diverse economy that is as self-reliant as possible. I know some of you were not here at the conference, but we are prepared to share some of our superpowers with you. One of the superpowers that we received over the last 3 days was an understanding that it's not enough to listen. One has to engage. And more than engage, we need a plan. So I would like everyone here who can to pull out your phone or pull out a piece of paper and scribble down answers to 7 questions. The first question has to do with residents. So my superpower is not working. There we go. All of us live somewhere. All of us have a place. If you listen to my friend Gilbert Rochecouste from Australia, you would have heard him expound brilliantly about the importance of placemaking. And Gilbert said that locals need to love their own place. That is the starting place for any kind of real development of one's community. So here's the first question for you. What is one thing that you and your neighbors can do over the next year to show your love for your place and to express that love? What is one thing you can do? All of us are also consumers. We buy things all the time, and a key to local prosperity, a key power for super local people is to buy more local more of the time. Because every time you spend your money locally, the money recirculates many times, and that creates income, wealth, and jobs. So the question I have for you is, what is one thing you can start doing over the next year to move 10%, just 10% of your purchasing from non-local goods and services to local goods and services? So don't waste your time on just one hammer or one head of lettuce. Think about big things like your housing or your transportation. Then there is our role as investors. I asked this question last year, but since many of you were not there, I'm going to ask it again. Most of you here have savings, long-term savings for your pension or for your kids' education. So here's a question. How many of you spend at least 1% on local business? Invest at least 1% in local business, by show of hands. Okay, you are the problem. You are the problem. Unless we invest in the things we love, we will never have the things we love. It's very simple. French society is mostly locally owned businesses. That's where most of the jobs are. That's where most of the value added is. And if you don't put your money into those things, the French economy will suffer. So I want you to think about what is one thing you can do to shift 1% of your savings into local business over the next year. Question number 4. Think of yourself as entrepreneurs. If you had the pleasure of attending the branding session where my friend Paul Saginaw from Zingerman's was, you would have learned how he and his partner Ari grew a small delicatessen in 1982 into 12 related businesses in Ann Arbor, Michigan that employ 750 people and are responsible for more than $65 million of sales a year. In other words, they not only built a business, they built a local economy. So those of you with businesses, or those of you who love a certain local business, what is one thing your business could do to localize your inputs, your sourcing? And what is one thing you could do as a kind of value added on the things you're producing already to do an additional product line, an additional business? How can you grow your business? Now, there's also not just entrepreneurs, but existing businesses. So existing businesses need to think about how it is that you can measure your success. Not just your economic success, that's easy, but your social success. How do you grow jobs? How do you help your workers? How do you nurture the environment? How do you support community? How do you have democratic governance? And one of the tools that's being used around the world is the B Corp. B stands for beneficial corporations, but there's many different standards out there. So the question I would have you answer, question number 5, is what is one thing you could do to get a business that you are linked with to start measuring its social progress over the next year? Now, there's a few people in this room who aren't just medium or small businesses, but are actually big multinational companies. And I am all with the philosophy of Jeremy Rifkin about embracing not just the local, but the glocal. And your challenge, 5B, as it were, that I want you to answer is, how can you get your multinational company to create new opportunities for local ownership? Now, that may sound ridiculous, preposterous, but in Australia, Bendigo Bank, a publicly traded bank, has created opportunities for hundreds of rural communities in Australia to create their own virtually local banks using a kind of just add some local capital formula. That, to me, is a brilliant form of localhood. Number 6, public policy. All local economies live in a policy environment. And I want you to think about what is one policy in your community that you could change that would make a big difference for the local economy. So this guy here, I also introduced him last year, is named Brian Gallant. He is the Premier of New Brunswick in Canada, 30-something, but very creative. And one of the things that he introduced in New Brunswick is a tax credit so that every resident of New Brunswick that invests more than $1,000 per year in local business gets a 50% credit on taxes they pay to the New Brunswick government. 50% tax credit to incentivize local investment. Now we're talking serious policy. What is that one serious policy you are going to push for this year? Finally, I want to talk about us as global citizens. Yes, we all live in a place, it's called Earth. And we have to relate to Earth in a new way. But there's a way of doing this that is sensitive to the local economy. And here's the challenge I would put out to you. How can you create a partnership internationally to share the best of what you are doing with your local economy? My friend Judy Wicks, pictured there, who runs the White Dog Cafe, she created a sister restaurant with a restaurant in Thailand called Cabbages and Condoms. And together they developed a whole exchange around building a social mission with a restaurant. That's part of the global economy. Who will be your partner this year internationally? What will you share with them? And what will they share with you that could be of use to you? Now, these 7 questions, in a way, are just a start, but I would make the claim that if you just take these 7 questions and not only answer them in the abstract, but really try to fulfill them over the next year, you're not only going to be super, you're going to be magnificent. And that's why I want to call them the Magnificent 7. They fought like 700. Being super local is not just attending a super local conference. Being super local is making firm commitments and realizing them and making a difference in your community and in your world. Now, granted, it may seem insignificant, but as Gandhi said, everything we do is insignificant, and yet it's still very important that you do it. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Michael. Ben voilà, hein, par rapport à ce que vous disiez, Mademoiselle.
So that's it. Going back to what you said before, young lady. Networking, doing together with all the players in the territories. We liked your approach. We'll keep the poster of the 7 Magnificent. And then our guest, Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAnd. Thank you, Philippe Vesser, because congratulations for the past 2 years. I mean, it's been a great ending and an inspirational moment. I mean, you're raising the bar, but it's on purpose. Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAnd is here. For those who haven't seen him yet, what's amazing, and maybe you will mention it, but it's the fact that everything you produce, books, films, movies, it touches hundreds of thousands of people, so there's a real interest in this message that you're carrying, these new models, this ecological vision of our planet, especially seen from above. And it would be interesting to see the gap. The idea here is to reduce it between these hundreds of thousands of people, citizens, inhabitants of the Earth that have an interest in changing the planet and actually taking action to do so. How do you go from being aware to taking action? I think this is really one of your main concerns for all your works that you've been doing. And a huge thank you for being with us. You're a photographer, you're a reporter, you're a filmmaker and a director, and then you created this great foundation, Good Planet, and you'll tell us more about it probably during your speech. So your main business is the photography. We wanted to give you a gift before we give you the floor. And we asked 5 speakers, partners of this word forum, to send us a picture to give it to you as a gift. We'll look at them briefly and I'll comment in a few seconds. So can we see the first one, please? Who knows where we are? This is Chile in Valparaiso. This picture was sent to us because this hill here on this huge metropolis went through a huge fire. In fact, it's the Cruz Hill. And, well, I think it was the worst fire in this territory, in fact, and this area, with huge consequences, 15 fatalities and 250 houses were destroyed and 100 1,000 people with a homeless. And why? I mean, this is where they store all the waste of the city, and so these hips created the fire. So I mean, this population here that had to manage this catastrophe, in fact, started a fight, and they said, we want to be players in this territory, and waste is not only for us. We have to reinvent the circuit and on this major metropolis, and we want to reinvent and take this into our hands. So this picture is kind of negative because of the event, but positive in the way the people reacted and decided to fight after this catastrophe. Second picture that was sent, this time from the Ivory Coast. This is very interesting because, I mean, it's super local, 100%, just like the first one, in fact. On this picture, I don't know if you can see it, but you see the bottles? In fact, they're developing production of natural fruit juice from passion fruit, in fact, and they use bottles, plastic bottles, but they recover them afterwards. So there's a circuit of circular economy that's been created on the territory level, and it's it's exactly what they try to do to fight plastic pollution. It's a fantastic picture, don't you think? It comes from the Ivory Coast. Third one. Third gift for you, Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND. This picture comes from Australia. In fact, there's a major project to retrofit the streets in Melbourne to create urban spaces that are lively, multicultural, people meeting and produce and reinvent the city. It's a movement which is called Village Well, and in fact, it was well developed in Melbourne. And this approach to renovate urban spaces promotes, reowning the public space. It's not only a big city. I'm an inhabitant of a neighborhood. We create network value. We develop activity, and so you feel well in it. And also, they worked a lot to make sure prices were reasonable for the rents in these areas in particular. The fourth gift. It's my area, or yours, Mr. President. My area. So this is now, you might have recognized this, the Lacanche Bay. This is at the heart of this bay where you can now walk everywhere and cycle everywhere. 45 hectares of territory, with recovery policy since 2009, because, I mean, we said for the past 3 days that it has to be on the long term, and it means we can create access to pedestrians and cyclists. So there's observatories that are implemented to look at birds in particular, migrating birds, because obviously there were relocation of those birds, and also there were some seals in the bay as well. And the last gift, the last picture, is this portrait, this picture. What do you think this guy does? This is India, by the way. This gentleman is checking his harvest, and this is one of the farmers that benefit from a program. What's interesting is that, well, let's think of Rifkin, is that they developed at local level a digital platform that was implemented by a company called Equitia, and this company in fact commits to small local producers to increase their productivity. So there's a network, they work together as always, and they use this digital tool, this platform, to steer harvest and count it and give information to each one of these producers, and this guy is one of them. So that's it, Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND. These 5 small gifts we wanted to give you. I mean, it's everything that we looked at together for these 3 days. The future is super local. We had a great demonstration, and you will tell us that all these transitions, all those transformations, we should also support them with our hearts. We're interested. Welcome. Come to see me.
Alors.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Can you turn, because the screens are behind you, in fact, and we're going to see a lot of pictures and videos. You might turn your seat. It's up to you. Anyway, I called this conference, I do it a lot in schools, in fact, usually. You're right? My friends are there. Anyway, it's called Scene from the Heart. You see this picture that I took in New Caledonia. I'm going to talk about my life. I'm sorry. It's not to do with my ego, but it's to explain how I decided to do what I'm doing now and what I understood. And it might be a bit... I'm sorry if you feel down afterwards for the evening, but this is a forest that is in the sea, in fact. It's not a fake picture. It's a real one, in fact. This is me when I was younger, by the way. And for 20 years, I've been interested in ecology and animals. And so, can you see? Yeah, you can see it here. In fact, I look at, I raised a lot of lions, in fact, with bottles. And my dream, my idol was Jane Goodall. I don't know if you know him. I love her. She looked at monkeys and chimpanzees in particular in Tanzania, and she's the first one that gave names to the chimpanzees, not numbers, and these are wild ones, in fact, but she really tamed them, and I wanted to do the same thing with lions. I went to, with my wife, and to Kenya, and I did something great. I built my house myself. This is amazing, with, a hammer and... So I went with my wife, she's here, and her two boys. So I have a third one since then, and then now we spent fantastic time. This is my wife was very much friends with the local populator, the Maasai. Have a lot of names for animals, so they had about 20 names, just like Eskimos as well, Inuits. Same thing for nature, for birds, and in fact there was a study online, and what's amazing, I was really bad at school. In fact, I went to 14 schools, and I was fired everywhere. I wanted to burn all schools. I hated school. And so when I was 30, you can do what in France, you can have a doctorate and write a paper, and you can't actually work in universities, but you can become a scientist. And I decided that my wife should write a thesis on the behavior of lion in Kenya. And what's amazing in Kenya is that animals are not scared of men. It's a bit like a tree, you come with your car, you can come very close, in fact, so much so that one day I fell asleep in my car and I tripped on the lion when I left my car. And so animals are not scared of men, only when they are on their own, standing. And for 3 years every day, you work on the territory, you see the same family, you look at what they eat, you look at the cubs, and 50% of them die because they're killed by hyenas and so on. It's very fascinating, and I learned as well something that was amazing. I decided to become a photographer because, in fact, photography gives you a very different information from writing, in fact. And so it was the lines that taught me photography, the meaning, in fact, and the beauty of the pictures and the patience, and also what I am myself as a photographer in this complicated nature, wild nature in Kenya. So every year, I suggest if you go to Kenya, you should go in August because there's 2 million new that cross the river. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And lions go hunting, obviously, because, this is where my job started. And in fact, this is who I am today. It comes from these moments, I'm sure. This is the lioness that we studied. She was called Malphis, and to recognize them, you look at the spots on their mustache on each side, and then you look at all them, and you can recognize them. When you do a study, it's important. This is a very well-known picture. And then I discovered this picture right much after I did it, because I used to develop them a few months later during the rain season in Paris. And so this is a picture I discovered about 10 months after I actually took it. And obviously what you can say on lions is that at the time they were about 400,000, and now it's only 20,000. So lions, it's a bit like bears or wolves in France. Wild animals are very numerous, and they are disappearing, so much so that the Maasai now are actually poisoning them. And in order to earn a living, so I I fly helicopters, and I became an air photographer at that time. I realized that taking pictures of the territory was very important as well. So this was my passion. This is also the time where you didn't have Google at the time. I mean, and now you look at, I mean, you can see your house on your phone, but at the time it wasn't the case. So I became a photographer, and then I decided to not finish my thesis. I mean, I published a book in many magazines, the National Geographic and so on, but I earned a better living than being a scientist, and I was much freer. So when I went back home, my publisher said, could you not write a book on Paris? So I wrote a book on Paris seen from the sky, and we could see that photography shows you things that you can't see. Can you imagine the number of bridges in Paris? I mean, only if you're in a helicopter you can see it. And so I became a photographer, and I spent about 10 years. I went everywhere to take pictures in nature, and then one day, I'll keep it short because I don't have much time, but one day my woman has a serious car accident, and she was pregnant, she gave birth, and I looked after the baby just like a mother from 6 in the morning to 9 at night, and I loved it. And in fact, my wife couldn't walk. She had crutches and she was in pain. And so one day somebody called me and said, do you want to go and take photographs of Yann ARTHUS in Rwanda? She was my idol. And I said, no, I can't. I'm looking after my baby, my son. And my wife said, go for it. You've been doing this for 5 months. Go and see the gorilla. And then she slept, in fact, and then I went to help her, and I hurt my back, and I left. I was walking like this to go to Kigali, and I needed injections, and then I went to see Yann ARTHUS, and then I arrived 2 days late, and Yann ARTHUS had a really bad temper, and she told me, I've got lung cancer, I can't go and see the gorillas, could you go and see it for me, and then take pictures, and then you will bring me all the shit from the gorilla, because then she could know exactly, thanks to the poo, she could recognize them, in fact. So I will skip details, but today in Congo is awful because after Rwanda and refugees and so on, you have the doctors that had the Nobel Prize. It's a region which is very dangerous right now, and gorillas also suffer from it. Very difficult for tourists to go there right now, or Congo or Rwanda.
Magnifique avec les gorilles. Et ce qui est très très émouvant avec les gorilles quand vous êtes photographe.
Spending a beautiful time with the gorillas, but I realized that this is a wild animal that's not scared of you. I was here as a small photographer. It's raining a lot, and gorillas came to me. There's an enormous male who just fell asleep, snoring on my foot. And I tried out of emotion, because as an animal photographer, gorillas were around me without being afraid. So I was having a wonderful time, and my back was really in pain. The sorcerers had made massages, and then one small male, he's so small, and he wanted to intimidate me, and he wanted to, he's sort of banging on his thumb, and he gave me a big blow in my back, and he actually put my vertebra right. So this is me as a photographer. I work as a photographer, I do lots of things. But in '92, the first Rio conference, of course, environments, ecology has all been of interest. More than that, it's part of my life. And I was listening to this conference, and I decided to work on Earth seen from the sky. Now, this has completely changed my life. I wanted to show the beauty of Earth, talking about environment and deforestation, but the beauty of the Earth for the year 2000. But all the scientists I've met are worried. We talk about the 90s, we're not about today. And we have this kind of worry, and very few people had seen that. I was watching the World Watch Institute, was a kind of report of the world every year with the big coral reef in Australia. But when you know that 50% of this barrier is disappearing because of climate change, you don't see it the same way. Aerial photography is graphics. This is a picture I made a long time ago with a big coral reef. You got the blue water coming from the sea, the green water. Then you have white sand, and then you have a small boat giving you the scale. Because aerial photography is a bit like a microscope. photography, very fractal shapes. Primary forests, we think that about 20% of the species are in the primary forest. Every year, we deforest the size of Belgium of primary forest, mainly to make cereal to raise animals, industrial facilities. The size of Belgium every year is every time which you were erasing a hard disk without looking inside. Each time scientists go there, they find new insects you haven't found before. We don't even know, we know only 20% of living species in the forest. Deforestation, palm oil in Borneo, the orangutan, you all know about this. What was incredible is that even the worst pollution becomes graphic and a beautiful picture to look at. Palm oil being the first oil consumed, the cheapest, a lot of people need it. Graphics and graphics again, try to make it look beautiful. These are drying nets in South Korea, on which you have like small algae to make sushi with. Egypt, with the dates, is quite a well-known picture with the dates drying out. It's a pain that you're turning your back to the big screen. Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't say the thing. So these are the dates when they come out of the tree. They are yellow and they become brown. And it makes an incredible painting when you look at it. It's magical, as if God or the peasants had decided for you. Baikal Lake, 20% of water of the world, 20% of the fresh water in the world, with the crackling in March when the snow was gone. When I meet scientists, I talk to them and I try and understand. Iceland, these are well-known pictures with this blue water coming from the glaciers with dust. It's about 5 by 3. And then sometimes we can see this pink stain there is just pink flamingos, and my helicopter goes up and down. Kenya, a very old photo I made with the tree of life. This is symbolic for me. These are all the elephants coming there to go in the shadow. There were 20 million elephants in the last century. There are 350 million, and we're talking about the inevitable disappearance of the elephants. I've seen that in Le Monde. You can't do anything. It's going to lose 10%. While we're talking about 40 minutes, 2 elephants will disappear in Africa. It doesn't make me happy. I'm in love with elephants, and if you've seen a troop of elephants crossing an African plain, must have been moved by that. Pink flamingos. This is Nakuru in Kenya. There were 800,000 when I made this picture. There are 200,000 today because of all the flowers that you buy in the winter. All the flowers don't come from Europe, you know. They come from Chile, Ethiopia, Kenya, and around the Nakuru they have a number of greenhouses with a lot of fertilizers. They go into the lake, and the lake is less salty, and the pink flamingos don't feel as happy as before. Now, this whale, it's a good news. I mean, you know, whales, why do they call that baleine franche in French? I just come back from Tahiti, and I really wondered about that. But filming the whales, I spent 1,200 liters of kerosene to go there. Honestly, I wonder whether I should have gone there. This is one that you could kill easily. It's a very frank whale, as we say. It was easy to kill, so this is why I called it. So this picture was made in Patagonia. Now, of course, when you photograph the world, you are interested into people and cities are a bit like an anthill in the forest. You don't have like the nature and man. This is Ulaanbaatar, the biggest progresses in Mongolia of vehicles, loads of mines with all these people, incredible. These are the shantytowns of Ulaanbaatar. 3 million people join cities every week. 3 million people. I can tell you that since I've been flying, I've seen urban areas sprawling. Because the poorest people are peasants and farmers. And out of the 75%, 80% are women. This is a major shantytown here in Ecuador. What is a shantytown for the United Nations is a place where you're not the owner of your territory and there's no sanitization, no electricity. You have no deed of property. This is what we call shantytown. These are very graphic pictures I made in the States. It's a style of shantytown. Now, of course, the graphics of this picture, all these B-52s, the bomb that bombed Vietnam like never before. I was watching a film. They estimated that in 1 week the B-52s had bombed Vietnam as much as the whole Second World War. Can you imagine? McNamara had done that test of rolling of bombs, and I'm wondering about weapons and military. Not so long ago, I was in Mosul. And I was seeing this city completely destroyed. You know, in the wars today, 90% of people killed in the war are civilians, 5% during the First World War. I thought it was Rafale who had bombed Mosul. Of course, but 3,000 civilians. And we are the country of human rights and NGOs. And we are also the third provider of weapons in the world. The military budget in the world is $1,800 billion. Imagine what we could do with that to fight against poverty. And we can't get out of it. This is Damas, just before the revolution. Very symbolic for me, because you can see all those satellite dishes, and you realize why this country went to revolution. I mean, we're talking about it. It said in the year 2000 it's going to be flying cars. No, not at all. The year 2000, Paris is closed because there's too much pollution. But communication. I mean, you go to Kenya, you can hear, I'm in front of a line. I mean, telephone network is everywhere. I'm in charge of an orphanage in Brasilia, and they're talking to their parents, uncles in Canada, Viber or WhatsApp. It's totally normal. The revolution of communication is fascinating. This is Northwest. When you went from the Pacific to the Atlantic, you had to go to the Panama Canal or Ushuaia. Now you can go to the north because there's a major thawing there. It was complicated this year because there was so much ice falling from the glaciers of Alaska that the boats couldn't do that. And cruise boats couldn't go there. When you talk to people there, the Inuits are very happy about the thawing because it's easier for them. But all the helicopter pilots and the scientists say that if it's an acceleration, it's meaningless because we know there's an acceleration of ice. What you should know is that the ice from the Arctic is seawater. So if it thaws, it doesn't matter. But the Greenland, if the ice of the Greenland, the water is going to raise by 7 meters. Not about Antarctica. Arctica seawater, Antarctica is freshwater. Very well-known mountain. Do you know what that is? You know where that is? Kilimanjaro, exactly. The eternal snow of Kilimanjaro, no comment. This is the best, the worst crap in the world. All the inhabitants of Alberta in that state are partners in oil research. So I'm very happy that BNP has stopped investing in bituminous sands like it did in Venezuela. And just a couple of words about the climate change. You know that today the climate change is due to the fossil energy, basically gas, oil, and coal. Imagine that in the COP21 agreement signed by everyone, the word fossil energy coal is not in that. It's prohibited. Otherwise, the producing country will not sign it. There's a kind of hypocrisy there that's incredible. It's really open bar for fossil energies, and then we ask us to reduce, but all the oil-producing countries don't want to produce oil and extract oil. A country like Norway, for example, where 50% of the cars are electric, is a major oil producer. So we have this kind of religion of growth, and we need so much the oil that we can't stop. We don't want to reduce the exploiting of petrol. Finland, when you eat meat in the States, it's more tender and sweet because these cows are fed with hormones and corn for some time. I was actually arrested for taking pictures of this, and if they arrest you, that means there's an issue here. So this picture, the increase, I mean, the richer the country, the more meat it eats. In France, I was looking at the figures. In the richest countries, we eat about 80 kilos of meat a person. And really, there's something that we can all do here is to stop eating that industrial meat, whether chicken, pig, and you have to continue eating meat for those farmers do their job right. But industrial meat is something we have to stop eating because realize that it's the worst thing could happen. I loved photographing those farmers who designed the ground like this. The poorest people, I repeat it, the poorest people in the world are farmers, people who don't sell anything. They only work as a daily sacrifice to feed their families, are the first people going to suffer from climate change. And in this picture, I like to say, we are filming a documentary about women at the moment, but most of the work is done by women, but only have 2% of ownership in the world. These are official figures from the United States. This is in Timbuktu, a picture I love. In the desert, with a bit of water and a bit of agricultural waste, we can raise things. This picture I made is quite well known. This is not cauliflower, it's cotton. This is in the Ivory Coast. This is organic cotton, hand-picked. And this is cheaper than American cotton subsidized by the American government. So the whole textile industry completely collapsed with this cheap cotton. And then all the clothes, that when you give your old clothes, goes to Africa and is sold on the African market. So by giving clothes, you were actually killing a textile industry in that area. It's the same thing for corn, subsidized corn. All the rich countries subsidized agriculture. So, of course, exporting, it's easier to export, it's cheap. This is hand-picked corn in Kenya. Now, refugees is something that I've always had a passion for. This is called Dadaab. You know where Dadaab is? It's the biggest refugee camp in the world. I believe there's one in Jordan. Nobody knows. This is Kenya. North of Kenya with the Somali border. 60 million refugees in the world today. Of course, the latest wars have increased those figures. And 470,000 live in this camp with a lot of issues with water. Now, this is a picture in Mosul recently. The whole city was destroyed, fully destroyed, razed to the ground. La Terre vue du Ciel came out, and I was very lucky that nobody wants to accept these pictures in museums. Nobody wants my photos. These are landscapes. It's not black and white. So I have no option but to exhibit this in the streets. So say, could I put my photos in the street, because I was an activist on that. And the exhibition is actually in Lille at the moment. You can go and see it with the old photos there. You see the size of the captions, which were important, scientific, and this was incredible success. Millions of people come and see it, and then I went to Bangladesh, Rio on the right, and the book is so successful. I went to the TV and I became a media person, while before I was just a photographer, an unknown photographer. But I liked it because I could talk about the problems of the world. An example, I continue a helicopter. I've decided I want to do drones, and we try to stick to it. This is a film we did on Morocco not so long ago. To show how we work, the camera is down there, and Bruno is taking pictures. Just a joystick, I say, and this ball here had insects sticking to it, so we have to go down and clean it. Sometimes we have issues like this one. That was in the States, where we actually crashed. Was in Katrina, and then the helicopter had an issue. It's a miracle we're still alive, actually. And what was funny is that the Americans took me on the hospital, and they cut my clothes up. I'd nearly died, and I wanted to drink wine because wine was my country, my friends. I wanted wine. So they actually put me to sleep. They gave me the instructions. They said, "You were such a pain last night because you were screaming wine." And wine for me was the taste of friendship and my land. At the same time, I was doing the earth from the sky. I also worked on farming animals. I have a passion for the relationship between man and animal. And I'm interested in these species. This is a bull from Notre. And we think that there are 2 or 3 domestic animals that disappear every week because we go towards races that are increasingly resilient. And before, each region had its pig, its goat, its horse. I've also worked on the French. I've got a passion for this. That was my butcher. My butcher looks like any other butcher. This is my grocery shopkeeper, my president, Mitterrand. And when the president arrived, I said, "But this is the same background as the pigs." And yes, and he found it funny. And then published a book on horses, because a horse is an extremely beautiful animal. And in my job, this beauty is something that's close to my heart. Then one day, I met Luc Besson, and they said, "Yann, I love your job. Could we do a movie together?" And we made the movie called Home. The miracle of the universe, life happened about 4 billion years. And then men arrived 200,000 years ago. Still, we managed to change this balance. Before the end of the century, this limitless exploitation will have used up all the reserves of the planet. And we have to accept this new challenge and be convinced. Everything you see is not only just a landscape. It's the loved face of our Earth. Now, this picture of Earth is, Al Gore says that this is really this picture which was the revolution of the ecological era, thinking that this planet, I still believed at that time that we could all change. After Al Gore's film, we were going to be careful, but in the end we didn't change anything. Last year we had more CO2, more carbon than ever before. Figures are getting worse and worse. And I was telling Voix du Nord, the newspaper, I'm a lost eco-activist. I mean, the reports are getting from bad to worse, but we're not going to continue on that theme. But one day, I tried to make this film, Human. Have you seen it? Raise your hand if you've seen Human. Well, those who haven't seen it, you should really watch it. It's very important. It's free on YouTube. It's a 4.5-hour film, but it's very important. Not because I made it, but because people say it. And then one day I stopped with the subsistence living agriculture. This is someone in Bangladesh. This is a small village like this one, with people that gave me everything, explained to me how they lived, and looking at me straight in the eyes, and he explained his fear of falling ill because you can no longer feed your family and you die of hunger. The fear of bad weather. And he said that in a very frank, open way, and decided to do some work. It's called 6 billion hosts, which is a project I love. I want to do it myself, but the success of the Earth seen from the sky has sent 6 young people asking the same questions to everyone about the meaning of life. And I wanted to mix these two things, these words coming from the heart, and aerial photography with a film called Human, and I'll show you the synopsis. Financed by Foundation Betancourt, so free of copyright in the whole world. For close to 40 years, I've been photographing our planet to try and understand the Earth I'm living on. While humanity progresses, I have the feeling that we are at a two-speed world with inequalities torn by wars, and we still can't manage to work together, to live together. Today, naively, like a child would do, I want to ask a question. Why? Why, from generation to generation, do we make the same mistakes? It's not in the figures and statistics that I can find an answer, but in people. For me, who photographs the planet, it is in the faces and in the words that I see a strong way of looking into people's soul. A proverb says that the eyes are the mirror of the soul, and I truly believe in it, because there's nothing stronger than someone looking you straight in the eyes and opens up his heart. Each meeting makes you go forward. Each story is unique. And looking into other people's stories, I wanted to understand, do we all have the same eagerness for love? In a world stretched before tradition and modernity, are the requirements of people the same everywhere? And what is a human being to do? What is the meaning of life? Are our differences so big? Don't we share more values than we think? And if so, why is it so difficult to understand each other? I wanted to ask all these questions to talk about humanity. It was just an utopist challenge. With my teams, we took up the challenge with a lot of humility. We went to 65 countries, filmed spaces and nature, had 2,000 interviews to meet our neighbors, those we talk about, and especially those you never talk about, those who for the first time were telling us the story of their lives. I wanted to take people out in the environment and only keep their faces and their words. Imagine a film where the strength of word resonates on the beauty of the world, offering you a trip to landscapes, but especially human histories and human stories. In Human, there are no comments. I let the raw words, pure words, putting at the core of the film the poverty, war, immigration, homophobia. I made choices, political, committed choices, and people talk to me about everything. the difficulty of growing and love and happiness, and it is the riches of those human words that make the core of human. So I'm going to show you 2 interviews from, do you know Pepe Mujica? Pepe Mujica is the president of Uruguay and is my political idol, definitely. He spent 5 years in prison without reading 1 book, and he was talking to ants. I don't know how you talk to ants, but that's what he did. I believed him. And a reflection about this religion of growth, and I understand why he's right and why I love him. I've thought a lot about it. I spent more than 10 years alone in a prison, and I had the time. I spent 7 years without opening a book, and it gave me a lot of time to think about it. And what I've discovered is that either you are happy with little, without too much things to clutter, because the happiness is in you, or you get to nothing. I'm not doing the apology of poverty, but apology of sobriety. And we've invented a consumer society, and we have to always grow, otherwise, without growth, it's a tragedy. And we've invented an incredible amount of superfluous things, and we have to constantly buy and throw it away, and this is ruining our life. When I buy something, when you buy something, you don't buy it with money, you buy it with the time of life that you had to spend to earn that money. With this difference is that life you cannot buy. Life goes on and on. It is incredible to waste your life losing your freedom. So we had an incredible day with him, and is someone who talks about ancient Greek, and was sent by Fidel Castro to fight against Condor, the extreme right, and he killed people, and he said he was a real terrorist. And he fought the extreme right in Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina. And this is an incredible man. He's no longer president, so he has an old Volkswagen. He didn't want to do that. He would grow his flowers, he would sell in the market, and then do his work as a president. So it's really someone who has this sense of humility and contact with other people. He was an incredible president.
So your second one is called The Untouchable. It's in India. There's 160 million of them. It's the poorest people in the world. These people have no rights. They go to the police. They don't talk to them. Kids at school, nobody talks to them. And it was this lady. I mean, we saw them. I saw an article in the newspaper where there was a cartoon saying that in this village, people in winter went to look for grain in rat holes, in fact. And I wanted to go in this village, and we talked to these people, and then I thought, do you have a message for political men? And this woman went to the UN on a big screen in the UN week in September, major screen, and she launched this message for all presidents in the world. Leader of the world, help us to have a decent life, or otherwise we're going to starve to death. It's the government's fault and politicians. If we don't even have enough clothes to get dressed or sleep or cook, we're dying. Who knows if we'll be alive tomorrow? Who knows if we'll have enough to eat? My kids are dying. We have no place to live, not even a house or a bit of land. I go from village to village to work on to plow other people's land, and one day you can eat, the other you have to starve. But nobody listens to us. The government doesn't care about our problems. These people do not think of poor people. They only think of themselves. Government should... they should come and see us, these politicians, see in what state our houses are, our huts, and see what we have to eat. Dry bread, salt, and peppers. We live in a misery state without not owning anything. No clothes, no bed. Who's going to help us? Politicians? Who's going to help us? These people, I mean, if you are untouchable, it means in a previous life you were bad, so it makes sense that you're untouchable. It's the system that was implemented to leave people in this state. And the first time I saw it, I was crying in front of this woman who was talking about, I mean, the fact that you have somebody that she has no joy to live. In fact, she doesn't enjoy life. And then after this video that I love, I suggest you watch it. We started a film called Women for the past 3 years. It's about women. I won't go into details, but let me tell you that I changed opinion about my mom, my sisters, and my wife after seeing this movie. It's really a fantastic movie. And what is it to be like in a movie? I hope we can see it in Cannes. And I am going to show you the teaser. I'm a very nice woman. I'm a creative woman. I'm a woman for peace. I'm a white woman. I feel like a woman that has value. Simple and complicated. I'm a woman, happy, strong, crazy. I'm a woman that makes sacrifices. I'm a dairy woman. I'm a warrior. I'm a hero. I'm sensitive. I'm dynamic. I'm alone. It would take a whole day to make the list of half of the qualities that I have. I'm proud of myself. I look at myself and I think, I'm beautiful. Why should I date it? When I see toilets full of red liquid, I'm like, Mom, I've got my period. At last, I had my first orgasm. I thought I was having a stroke because I was like, wow. I saw his heartbeat, this little pea in a pod, and I thought, wow, it's for real. There's somebody in there. And I thought, it's growing, and I was in control. At that point, I realized I became a woman. I couldn't speak normally. I couldn't say anything. As if this is what they're calling love at first sight, and then here and there, it made me feel beautiful. My husband said, look at yourself in the mirror, and then you will understand why you're not attractive to me anymore. And the question was, what do you expect from a woman? But what do you have more than as a man? I quickly realized that this relationship was going to kill me. If I didn't leave, I would die. My biggest challenge was to stand in front of an audience and say, it's in English. I'm emancipated because I'm able to express myself and to show my talent. Women open their eyes. Well, that's in English as well. I always compare myself to a bird, not a chicken, but a falcon that would fly high in the sky. So this is something we did 1.5 years ago, and let me tell you, I said I wouldn't show it, but I'm going to show it all the same. It's the interview I had with a Breton woman. In fact, 2 months ago. It's exactly what I want to say about this film. Over to you. I decided today to give my testimony because in 2011, in October 2011, I was at a party with my friend, Dieter Lams, and during that evening, I could feel a hand on my bottom, and I thought, well, in fact, being so close in that place was the reason for this contact. So this happened, so I just moved away, and then the hand followed. So I turned around and I said no, and the hand kept going on, and managed to catch the look, and I was in front of the man who was touching me, and I said no. I looked at him right in the eyes, straight in the eyes, and his hand went up and touched my shirt. And I was lifted from the floor. My feet didn't touch the ground anymore. And I was numb. In fact, I was headbutted in the middle of a dance floor in a club. And I woke up on the pavement in front of the club, and there were loads of firemen around me, and my boyfriend at the time, and my friend. And I recognized him. He was chatting with the policeman, and he was going to leave, but I pointed at him, and my friend understood right away that it was him. He was arrested, and I was taken to hospital. And I had 3 teeth broken, and my nose was broken as well, and I had a head injury, and I had stitches on my lip as well. But I hadn't seen myself in the mirror yet. After hospital, I was taken to raise a complaint. And I think this was the hardest bit, in fact, to tell. I wanted to raise a complaint for sexual aggression, and I was explained that he didn't penetrate me, and it was not really sexual. However, I mean, this is what happened, and this is because I said no that it started, and it was me as a woman that said no. I was told that he didn't touch my pussy either, so, and it just exploded. It had to. My friend actually blew a fuse because her and me, we had a similar type of education, very free, but while complying with the rules of society at the same time. And we consider that at a given point, women has to be heard because of unfairness, and it wasn't the case in that case. So, I mean, the judgment was there, so I gave up. I just, raised a complaint for violent aggression, and he was the judge guilty. I was seen as the victim. But it took years, and only in 2016 did we have the verdict. But in 2013, 2 years after the aggression, I decided myself that I was going to start again, in fact. And for 2 years, I wanted to die because nobody wanted to listen to me. And listening is justice, is making sure that... Right. Let me tell you that it's a movie which is... I mean, let's go back to ecology.
Que l'écologie et l'humanisme d'aimer.
I think loving trees and animals and is loving people as well. And I've always loved people, and more, in fact. And talking about ecology is talking about relationships. At the last report, in fact, that was published, the 1,500 scientists, 15,000 scientists talking about the sixth extinction, the death of our kids and our grandchildren. It's important, and this religion of growth, we're unable to change the way we change our system. It's always about growth, and we need a revolution, and this revolution will not be political. I mean, we have the politicians we deserve, in fact. Let me keep it short. I mean, we spend every day 19 million barrels of oil, 95 million barrels of oil, and I mean, solar panels will not change anything. Obviously, you need solar panels. Obviously, you need wind turbines. But I mean, I can say it. I mean, here, this is a kind of religion of growth. Obviously, there's employees to pay and hospitals and schools and so on. I don't have the solution to this problem, but in any case, you can't keep going this way. And in fact, there are local initiatives that are great, but it won't be enough. We need a spiritual revolution and an inner revolution. Are we all able to do it, to say, I mean, it's not lobbying forcing us to eat meat, it's for me to decide, and I really believe in this personal revolution that we should all have. And I mainly believe that we should insist on essential values, honesty, ethics, moral, compassion, empathy. I believe in this, and today my message is, I mean, this is why we opened this foundation in Paris, which is the Good Planet Foundation. It's free. It's always open to talk about ecology, and we talk about bees, but also refugees, and we talk about pesticides, and we talk about poverty in the world, and we talk about salaries for managers, and this is open to all kind of NGOs in the world. So obviously we insisted on, I mean, we have an exhibition of everything that we couldn't put in human, and we'll put human later on, the major exhibition pictures. We talk about bees as well with kids. We talk about music, and Mohamed Yunus came to talk, Jane Goodall as well. And with the foundation, we are preparing in all schools in France, we're going to send posters about the Sustainable Development Objectives. So the 17 of them. So a picture, you see a picture, we're going to talk about biodiversity. And then we wrote a book, Let Me Go Faster. So I'm an ambassador of goodwill of the UN. Doesn't mean much goodwill, but still I was an ambassador. And looking at animals like this, and looking at figures, more than 24 species that are endangered today. The figure is actually huge. I mean, what can you say? And it is true that my great-great-great-grandfather was called Arthus, and he wrote books. You see at the time, this is the Royal Navy. Until 1860, and he did what I do today, in fact. And all these animals, I was looking at the pictures, in fact, a lot of animals disappeared. I could find in my archives, but I really hope that lions that I studied, that my kids and my grandchildren can see them as well. That's it. I wanted to finish on that, to say that only love will change the world. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I cry more and more easily these days. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older. But I don't mind crying. I think crying is accepting to be a man. I mean, I know that you have a train to catch. Can we take about 15 minutes? Yes, sure. They're taking pictures. I mean, all this work and everything I saw makes me the man I am today. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. You know, it's when I traveled, I met people, I talked, and I'm fascinated. I mean, I'm preparing my next movie, Legacy. I will talk about it.
Je fais un film qui est la suite du film Home. Et quand j'ai fait Home, je pensais.
When I did Home, I thought things would change, and I thought I could live in a different way. But we can't do that. And what's horrible is that in France, I mean, we're the 6th richest country in the world. We have an amazing quality of life. But I mean, I'm not against growth, but I think we should maybe learn how to live better with less waste and so on. But all developing countries are dreaming about living like us. I mean, Indonesia, I went recently in a kind of plant where there was 5,000 women manufacturing clothes for everybody, T-shirts, shirts for the whole world. I mean, my dad, who just died a few years ago, I mean, he had 5 shirts, you know, and 2 suits, and mine, I've got 50 times the same amount. So you've got this kind of will to consume more and more on radio, on TV. They tell you have to buy because if you buy, I mean, this is what makes the world go round, you know, and I don't know how to change this. Anyway, who wants to take the floor? Ask a question, yes?
Ah ben voilà, un micro.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Good evening, Nicolas Karasiewicz. Thank you very much, because I can remember one sentence was, eyes are the mirror of the soul, and luckily I can't see well, but one other sentence that made me react is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry that said that you see with the heart, the essential is invisible to the eyes, and what you did tonight, even though I couldn't see the pictures on the screen, well, in fact, you shared messages, so thank you for this, because in fact I could follow all the same. My question was, what would be your definition of diversity? So when you shoot a film like Human or Woman, everybody's different, nobody's the same. This is what I think is different from what others think, which is a real issue today. So diversity is around myself, around me all the time. You're different from me, we're all different from me. We don't all think the same thing. So diversity is the fact that you're unique, and so how can I put it? I mean, I'm still hopeful. Don't get me wrong. You know, when I shot that movie called Legacy, which is the sequence. I mean, it's when you are brave enough to say the truth. Obviously, you can show initiatives, and the figures are what they are today, and we see that it's not enough, and so I'm not a believer, by the way. But I think you should write the Pope's book, and I was amazed to see how this Pope says that everything we do and all the decisions we make on ecology is superficial. We're not radical enough. And I mean, I don't know how to end this movie, but in fact, 2 things. In fact, all these people walking on the climate demonstration here in Lille, in Paris, and so on. At the same time, in Paris, there was 15,000 of us, and for Johnny Hallyday, there was 500,000 of us. So obviously, you have to get your priorities right, you know. And I think there will be more and more people. And obviously, I'm still full of hope, but my son, Tom, that lives in Lille for a while, there's his friends there, well, he decided to to not do like me. And he said, I want you to be a farmer and feed the world and feed my family, and I want to be happy with that. Maybe he's right, and maybe this notion of going back to essentials, I think he's right. Going back to the essential values, I mean, work with your hands and feeding people around you and helping. But we can all do that around here. I mean, bankers, carpenters, and so on. Go to the essential. And what's important with this is that, I mean, I'm not a good example. Another question, who wants to say something? Sure. I have a question that I've been keeping for you for several years, in fact. If you talk to someone that's 25 or 30 today, who has the whole professional career in front of them and who wanted to really do something with this career to save or improve what can be saved or improved apart from the private domain we talked a lot about, what kind of emergency you would pick to advise that person? Say social, CO2, biodiversity. What would be the path that you think should be followed, on which you could dedicate a career? Well, you should never listen to other people's advice, but if you did it yourself, you shouldn't be scared to get lost. You shouldn't listen to advice, and you have to do what you want to do. But what has to be done today is so huge. I mean, you can go everywhere. It could be a baker, education. There's so much to be done. I mean, I can't give you any advice. Everything has to be done. Everywhere around you, you can help people, you can share, you can give. And let me tell you that people that take action, people that give and share, they have something more than the others. In fact, I work a lot with NGOs. I see a lot of people that help, that share. I mean, volunteers that work with the Resto du Cœur, I mean, it's so enjoyable. You can tell, I mean, I look after an orphanage and refugees in Paris. I look at people that work with them. It's incredible. So I can't give you any type of advice. There's so much to be done. You can go for it. Don't be scared. And in fact, life has no meaning as such. It's for you to decide the meaning you want to give to your life. And this is what's great today. I mean, young people dream about meaning. They're obsessed with the meaning they're going to give to their life. And when you see the deadlines, obviously, you want to be a player in the change, and you're right to be. But this is why I'm so positive about it. It's this will, all these awful figures. You're going to fight for your lives, for your kids. You know, I mean, I might see things, but you will be right in the middle of it. So it's for you to wake up, and I think that you shouldn't be scared of doing things, even though others don't do it. What's important is what you do yourself, and taking action makes you happy. This is something we say a lot at the foundation, and doing good things around you is important. So, I mean, it might be a bit naff, you know, but it's true. I believe in it. I'm sorry I didn't give you the right answer, but in other words, in another context, this was Rifkin's message as well to 2 days ago to the 1,500 young people he met. One last question, or two last questions, sir over here, and with you, lady over there. Last two, because. Oh, up to you. You want to go first? Who wants to go first? Okay. It wasn't a question, in fact. Going back to what you said before about consumption and why we don't stop over-consuming, and why can't we stop being in this dynamic, this obsession about... I think we're very lucky that we can... So we can create, be it a cake with your kids or a relationship. And when we create, we don't need to consume or far less anyway, because you're happy and you have this kind of, I mean, you feel full, in fact, and you don't need to feel it anymore. When you create, and you can create a company or a smile, or so we have the opportunity to create every day. Yes, you're absolutely right. The fact that you do things at the same time, it should be creating for the others, not only for you. There's a lot of ego in creation as well, so you should create to help the others. But you know, last night I read the figures on the population. Do you know how many people are born every day? Can you tell me? Oh, every year, sorry. 120 million people every year. And 45 million that disappear, that die. So, I mean, you can't do the same thing with 2 billion or 7 billion people. There's not even enough fish or so we'll have to stop consuming one day. We'll have to. So today it's kind of overproduction in rich country because we throw away 30% of the food we consume. Anyway, I'm not going to get started because otherwise I'm going to talk about organic canteens and pesticides and so on. But so I had said one last question. Last but one, and then very last one with you. Go ahead. Can you stand up? I can't see you. Well, first of all, thank you for your testimony and the pictures and videos. And my question was, I often met people that say, I dream about beating people, I want to improve things, but for some reason I don't feel I'm up to it, or I don't have the ability. And for these people, what do you think? How could we find enough? How can we be brave enough? Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say, but I mean, to get started in what you really want to do, how can you be brave enough to apply your values and take action? I really want to, but how can we do it? Can some people answer instead of me? Are some people committed in associations, refugees, people who do this here? Who does something here? Yes, I don't want to answer that, in fact. I'm not perfect, after all. I think you shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't be scared to do things and to fail, in fact, because obviously fear keeps you from doing things. You should just do it. If you fail, doesn't matter. And that's it. Sir? Don't be scared, that's all. Don't be scared about failure, and it's true.
Zambia. Bonjour, monsieur.
A very short question for you, sir.
Yes.
You're
welcome, sir.
I've listened very attentively to your presentation.
Yes.
And it frightens me.
Yeah.
And my question is there hope?
Yeah. But you decide yourself if you hope or not. It's your decision. You can choose. If you are pessimistic or you're optimistic, you decide. If you look at the data, you look at the good things happen to you, you decide. It's too late to be pessimistic, you know, and today we need hope. But you have also to have the courage to tell the truth and to look at the data. I think I don't want to lie. That's all. Merci, monsieur.
Merci, merci, monsieur. Merci.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND. Thank you very much. You're at home. You can come back whenever you want to show us the film, Women. Thank you very much. Philippe Vasseur? Shall we wrap up?
Pas très bien ce que je peux dire après.
I don't know what I could say.
Non mais je fais ça toute la journée, moi, parler d'amour.
Talking about love is something I do all day long, so I can't see what I can say after this. I'm being asked. We just went round the world and and they asked me to come back down to Earth to talk about logistics. Well, actually, I can see what was my experience for the forum in 3 minutes. Well, the first thing I can say is that we were disappointed. We had people who didn't show up. This morning we were supposed to have a representative from Danone. We didn't have her. We had another one because in the meantime she was identified by someone, the Prime Minister or the President. She became Secretary of State, junior minister. First, the replacement was perfect. The second disappointment, we were expecting the Vice President of the European Commission, and he called the day before to say that since he was a candidate to be president, he had a meeting that was important. But we took advantage of that to obtain from him that he would have financial support on significant projects for us. So this is logistics, but for us it's important. We're in a region where we have a number of requirements to fulfill, not necessarily for growth, but for the well-being of the population. And then if I were to go away with a very, very brief couple of things, there are images that I will remember, take away with me, is the 1,500 young people who listened attentively to Jeremy Rifkin. It is not very often that we have 1,500 people listening to someone who's... And I think that they changed, they must have been changed. Some of them are here tonight, and they're even more transformed after listening to you. And I think that the Rifkin's message was to say, you know, I'm an old man already, and it's up to you, because you represent the future, and the world will be as you will make it. Very good image. And the last beautiful image, when I saw all the university presidents and graduate schools and R&D organization come together to sign a protocol of agreement, to a draft agreement to work all together on the future of this region and planet. It doesn't seem much, but some of you may have followed the difficulties of merging 3 little universities. I can tell you that gathering all the universities, all higher education in the north of France was not that easy. And we will have research programs and study programs in which human sciences will play an important role. Because generally when we talk about our revolutions and we imagine that it's business, we're going to have business schools, technology, we'll have the engineering school. And now this is that we must be in a position to apprehend the future of society in all dimensions, including the sociological aspects and economical aspects, of course, and social aspects. And the very last word, there is something in the plenary sessions. And normally plenary sessions are, they will have Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND, then I'll come to the plenary sessions. But not everything happened in the plenary sessions. And during these 3 days, there were more than 90 sessions. And we gathered on themes, there were specific themes with specialists in units of 100 to 200 people. I couldn't take part in all 90 of them, but I attended some of them. And the wealth of what you can say in this is enthusiastic. And our goal, this is the way we were the World Forum, our goal was to show what could be done, what was done, what is being done in a number of countries. From all over the world, experiments from other places. Yann ARTHUS-BERTRAND showed us what was happening around the world. We chose a couple of good examples that can give us hope. So as long as we have people who commit themselves and do things in spite of all the hurdles that you may know, and sometimes reservation, we can keep hope. We are reasonable optimists. Sometimes, and I'm an active pessimist, the way I say it, is that we can be a pessimist, but act all the same and say that by acting, we may end up where we are, where we can be. If we all do it, we can transform a little bit the world in which we live, and that if everyone decides, or majority decides to do like what we do, This is how we will change the world. And the very last word, Yann, I was also struck. I didn't identify that there was no adhesion to fossil fuel in the Paris Agreement. But what struck me is statistics that I read about 10 days ago. 180 countries signed the Paris Agreement at COP21 3 days ago. 180 countries. How many countries out of the 180 have actually committed, have already engaged the measures that promised? 9 only, 5%. So this is a sad demonstration that we mustn't content ourselves with what is being signed and major declarations. We should act. I repeat it. There will be my leitmotif, where we are, where we want to be, and where we can. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, vous allez aussi diriger vos applaudissements vers les...
So thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to the Alliance World Forum, all the volunteers who have worked for these 3 days. No, 363 days for the success of this 12th issue. We meet you next year? Okay. See you next year. So next year, my wish, and I would like to say clearly, is that what we've built 12 years ago continues and lasts a long time. But for this, there is always at one point where we ask the question of succession. So we must continue all, but other people must continue what I've started here and not let the project die. Thank you to all. And see you soon, and let's do it. Let us continue doing it. Have a nice evening, and it's goodbye from the interpreters booth.